Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Dunn County Planning and Resource and Development Committee and Land Conservation Committee. And I can see from our screen that all committee members are present. So we'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a approval of the minutes from the March 9th meeting? There's a motion for that.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Supervisor Morehouse and Supervisor Anderson. Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Do we have any public comment today? Krista and Tom?
There is no public comment.
Thank you. We have no public hearing. So just a quick housekeeping item. We have a review of a tax clause for property sale. And without objection, I'd like to move that. That'd be 8B. Move that up to the top of the agenda under staff reports, and to give Barbara a chance to explain it and then get on with her day. Is there any objection to that? Okay, then we'll move directly to item 8B. Barbara?
Thank you so much. So this is the formerly the Herman property on County Road S, and the committee established the minimum bid for $85,000. We received 4 bids. Before the committee votes on the bids, one of the bids, the Clausens did submit a letter that they've asked that I read to the committee. And so with your permission, I would do so.
Sure.
To the members of the Dunn County Planning, Resources and Development Committee, we appreciate the members of the committee taking the time to read and consider our offer regarding parcel 21-01. When considering our offer, we humbly ask that you not only consider the monetary value of our submission, but also the value of the community members you grant ownership of this beautiful property. For many years, our family has called this wonderful county our home. The committee may be pleased to learn that we are in good standing with our taxes, having always paid in full on time. We take pride in the fruits of our hard labor and fiscal responsibility. Both my husband and I have a combined commitment to our employers of nearly 26 years. The committee may be interested to learn that for many years, we have carried exceptional credit as defined by reputable credit agencies. In addition, we both maintain clean judicial records. Our plans for parcel 21-01 would be to restore and enhance property value. The first phase would focus on allocating adequate time and resources to properly clean up this property. This is not only for safety, but also for restoring the natural beauty of this land. Our second phase would be to transition into the design and construction of a single-family residence, incorporating green energy aspects as good stewards of the land. We feel our efforts would enhance the economical and environmental value of this property. In closing, we hope that this letter supports your decision to select our bid as a sound investment for the committee, this county, and the neighbors of this parcel. We hope to call this beautiful piece of land our home for many years to come. We are much obliged for your time and consideration in the matter. Andrea Clausen. And so so the Clausens were, the Clausens bid $91,500. That was ahead of the of Dennis Feet and Lisa Meyer, who bid $87,150. Higher than both of those bids would be both Jamie McDermott and Scott McDermott, coming in at a bid of $95,000. And ultimately, the highest bid of the property is $122,000 by Robert Anderson, Elena Anderson, and Jesse Anderson. Given the, I defer to the weight that the committee would like to give the Clausen's letter. I had shown the Clausen's the property, and they were very interested in the committee considering that. However, the Andersons are significantly a significantly higher bid, and so my recommendation is that the committee adopt accept the 100,022 bid from the Andersons.
Okay. Any questions or discussions on this?
But, Barbara, is that the old, like, the, Sovereign's property that was called there?
It
Okay,
is.
thank you.
And the back taxes when the property were taken were $4,870. When the property was taken in 2013, it was hung up in litigation all the way up to the Court of Appeals for a number of years. And so that was part of the delay of selling the property.
If there's no other comments, I'll make a motion that we go with a high bid, the Robert Anderson's bid for $122,000 for that property.
Okay, let's put that on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. It is a significant difference in price, no question about it. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, then I will call the question. All in favor of approving the motion to accept the $122,000 bid from the Andersons, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Let's see, staff reports, Board of Adjustment update. Mr. Colson.
Let me get myself unmuted. I did send over we've had two Board of Adjustments. The other one just happened, and so I will go through those. But I think really I'll just give an overview. If you have questions, I will certainly answer questions. But so milestone materials, this is the one that just happened. And it was a fairly lengthy meeting. And what Milestone was asking to do is to expand the existing footprint of their mine, and that put them into the new zoning classification of greater than 25 acres over the life of the mine, which the amount of data and submittals that's required is substantial, and it took the committee, it took the board about 3 hours to get through that hearing. I think in the end, aside from the normal conditions that we deal with, with something like this, noise and noise and vibrations and groundwater and traffic, and and just limiting them to the construction aggregate. I think that at the bottom on the outside jurisdictions agencies, the town of Lucas has its own set has a blasting ordinance and a mining ordinance, and Milestone has not completed those discussions with the town yet, and so it was important that happen, and so the permit, the condition of the permit is that we will withhold our special exception permit until the town and the applicant have had a chance to finalize those, and that they have the permits from the town. And then also with land conservation, Milestone will be entering into discussions for the reclamation plan, and a condition also that we work with land conservation and hold our permit until that plan has been finalized and agreed upon as well. So it was approved, and it was some pretty lively discussion. There was one public comment, I think, in the past, and maybe if it was face to face, there may have been more people. But in the past, I mean, there's been very controversial issues, mostly just of a large mine. This is, and maybe this was because the mine was construction aggregate and not industrial sand, but I was expecting more people and we didn't get them, which was, I guess, good and bad. So with that kind of basic overview, I'll turn it over to the committee if you have any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Colson? That was a question I was going to ask you about, but it sounded like it was construction aggregate and a little bit different situation.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even though the amount of materials that we require for construction aggregates for 25 acres or greater for the life of the mine is substantial. If it was industrial sand, there's even more materials to review, and that's why it was important in the hearing to restrict them to only the construction aggregate, because that's all we looked at. So,
right. Okay. Any questions from the committee? All right, move on.
So the next one was a Tim Stauffer, and this one at the end I will speak specifically to some information that I put in that is sort of related, but it wasn't part of the hearing. But Mr. Stauffer, Ag Entertainment, wants to convert his barn into a wedding venue and entertainment center, I guess, if you want to call it for a better term. And the same thing, we've done several of these in the county, and Tom, could you please scroll down, please? And right there, and we deal with, it's pretty standardized now. We know what works and what doesn't, and the things that we need to be talking about. And so this is no different than the others that we were dealing with, except for the very bottom one, the outside agencies again. And the permit will be withheld until the DNR either issues a permit to cross the navigable streams, and we weren't sure if both of them, there are two crossings, if they were both going to be deemed navigable or not. And I'll just tell you that the applicant has had discussions with the DNR, and in fact, one of the streams that is that intermittent stream, it is navigable, and so they will be placing a culvert there. The other one, the crossing for the temporary, there's a temporary or an overflow parking area, and it requires another road to the south of where they were, requires also crossing a stream, and the DNR deemed that was not navigable, and so he doesn't need to do anything with that second crossing. And so before I get into that, is there any questions maybe just about Mr. Stauffer's BOA? And then I would like to I promised that I would talk about navigability as part of this process or this report. So any questions about the BOA's approval of the Ag Entertainment venue? All right. If not, I did want to just speak to Supervisor Bjork's question about navigability, and just so that it's a good question, and I think it's important that the committee also understands that. So our ordinance, and you can see the sections of the ordinance that deals with navigability. Our ordinance says, that if it shows up on the DNR's publication FH 800 2009 or shown on the USGS quadrigal maps, then it's considered the initial determination by the zoning administrator, and I have that ability to make that determination, is that it's deemed navigable. So on the quad maps, on the USGS maps, those were made back in the 40s, 50s, and so we have copies of those maps, and so whenever we are looking at a property, we always look to see if it's floodplain, wetland, or if it shows up, if it isn't obvious if it that there's a stream or a river there or a lake, that if it shows up on the quad map, then our determination is that it's navigable. And if the applicant disagrees, then we bring in the DNR, and the DNR makes the final determination. And so we've done that in the past. We have had challenges to our questions about our determination, and in fact, so then we do bring in the DNR. We did have a discussion with Mr. Stauffer about this. He raised no questions about our determination, and if he had, we would have went to the DNR and asked them for a final determination. I think that this process works well. It's fairly consistent, and if there's concerns, I'd like to hear from the committee. But otherwise, I would say I would like to just continue using that process going forward.
Any questions?
Thank you for
Okay.
that, Tom.
Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead,
Thank you
Gary.
for that, explanation. My only concern is if you would determine that it's navigable, that there's a whole lot more restrictions placed on that intermittent stream than one if it would be just called what it is, a intermittent stream. That's my main concern.
Yeah.
Because I got some intermittents on my property that very, very seldom do you ever see water in them at all, and call that
Yeah.
like,
Well,
like navigable was a concern because there's more stringent rules and regulations when it's determined to be navigable. So, but according to the DNR's definition, I guess you have to go with that also.
yeah, and our shoreland, and it would take an amendment now to our ordinance, and so our shoreland ordinance, it's a one size fits all across the state now. I mean, the state came in and gave us the template and said this is what you will do, and you really can't go too far either direction. It would, if there was interest, we could go and see if we couldn't remove the intermittent stream, but I'm guessing that there would be pushback from the state, but that would be the committee's decision if they want us to pursue that.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Bob.
You bet.
Let's move on then to the next item. Comp plan review and update.
Call you later.
Yeah, so this is going to be coming to you piecemeal, just because of the way that the time I have, and I think it's important that I bring it to you, just to keep it in front of the committee. So there was some changes to the some additions to the document from last time. So before I get into this, let me just ask if there's any questions just about the text as it stands right now, and realizing that it is still a works in progress.
Supervisor Kinnear here, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
What do you mean by text, Bob? You mean
Well, I have some maps also.
grammar or something?
Well, anything
okay,
is at this point is up for grabs. I think grammar and punctuation, might be a little early, but if you see something, absolutely, we to deal with it. So with that, again, I'll turn it back over to the committee.
Bob, if there's any grammar or anything, I'm sure Diane will catch it before I will, but I will send you that separately. But,
well, I wouldn't bank on it, but anyway.
That's not nice.
But that was nice. I thought it was nice.
Okay.
You catch it first. Okay. But yeah, I do have a few questions as we go through. I'm not quite sure how you want to do this, Mr. Chair.
Bob, what was your plan?
Well, I was going to skim through the document. There's some places I'm going to stop and have a more detailed discussion. And so, if as we're scrolling through, if you want to stop, similar to how we did, you guys worked with Tom on the the subdivision ordinance. You skim through it, and if there's places that you have discussions that I hadn't planned on discussing, or stopping at, bring it up, and we'll stop and discuss those. I know that as we get near the end, I want to have a pretty detailed discussion about some of the stuff at the end, because it's pretty broad, but I do want to know the committee's thoughts on maybe where we're heading with that. So
Well, why don't I share Mike's interest in sort of identifying some areas for further discussion, but
sure.
why don't we go through it?
All
And
right.
we'll stop. You can stop, or we can stop you if we have questions, and we'll add some.
Yep. So I don't have anything on this page. There's pretty much just some background, and any place that you see red is those are areas that I'm having discussions with the consultant, and so we haven't quite finalized that language, and so and these are just some definitions. We go into existing land use and some patterns, and we're working on those definitions and a map of how those are going to be distributed, and those maps will be presented here as to how that is distributed in the county. And right now, the plan is that there would be 3 tiers of maps that are shown: the northern third, the middle part of the county, and the southern third, so that we can see that much of the county, rather than an individual or which gets really lengthy, or one big one where you can't see anything. So we're going to break it into thirds. Here's some population trends, and you can just see what's happening in these, and where their population is expanding and where it's really not growing. And then we break it down by municipality, and actually there are some municipalities where that population is growing quite rapidly, and there are some where they are losing population. In the town of Grant, they're losing they're projected to lose 13% of their population, by the life of this plan. And there's a lot of factors into that, and we can talk about those if you like, or we can move on. And then household projections are also going to looking to decrease, even though the population is going up. It's the numbers of people that constitute a household, and so the household is looking to also shrink. And here's and I thought this interesting. Now you can see the population trends over the course of the life of this plan, the sunset of this plan, and you can see in the middle and next to Chippewa where the growth is, and then as you get over to St. Croix where the growth is, and then at the two ends, there's those are where you're seeing a lot of the negative growth projected over the next 20 years. And then we'll be doing some future land use needs, just determining just how much land is going to be needed for these different uses, and so that will be populated as we move through. And then just some land use conflicts are going to be something that's going to be the bulk of what this committee is going to be dealing with over time when it comes to the comp plan. It's conflicts and then changes to the plans. And so we wanted to start developing some definitions of Dunn County. And so there's future land development areas. There's community identity, which is the community as a whole. But then part of community identity, and a lot of people may think that they're the same, but it's just a component, is rural character. And rural character has been a recurring concern since we started this process. 15 years ago. The loss of rural character it comes up in virtually every discussion at some point that we had with the local jurisdictions, and so we've defined that. This map is a little out of place, but I just wanted to show that we have went and defined both conservancy areas and wooded areas, and conservancy is for now, and this is something that I want the committee to think about, or if you have some comments right away to get them to me. But right now, what we've done is we've mapped all the areas and deemed them conservancy if they're floodplain, wetlands, and steep slopes greater than 20%. And those are the areas in the county that fit that definition. And if we need to expand that definition from a mapping standpoint, we certainly can. It's going to be important that we go back one time, just a minute, Tom. It's going to be important that we're in concert with what this is, because the plan is going to recommend that these areas, unless there's no other place to develop, that these areas are going to be off limits for development. So we want to make sure that we're not too broad, or that we're not too narrow in what we're going to be deeming as conservancy areas. So I would ask the committee to really give some thought about that.
Bob, can I interrupt here? I'm just curious, the term conservancy, doesn't that have a different meaning too in other areas?
Yes, I
I
think
looked at that as, okay, these are areas set aside and monitored by someone.
Yeah. So in zoning, yes, and most of these terms are have been around a long time and been used in a lot of different contexts. You're correct, and if conservancy isn't the proper term, we can certainly change it. There is, and that may be something to consider, because we do have a conservancy zoning district, but I think that so if the name is misleading, we can certainly rename that as well. So thank you, Mr. Kadir, and if I can ask the consultant to come up with maybe some different terms and bring them back for the committee to kind of weigh in on.
Well, maybe when you said that these are areas that we don't want to build on, it might not be such a bad term. But anyway, thank you.
Well, think about it. Yes, please do think about it. There's plenty of time to make these corrections. So go ahead, Tom Carlson, please. And I spoke to this last time that our plan is really taking a tremendous right turn from what it was before. Before we took the state's money and the state said, here's the recipe, you go bake this cake and then give it back to us. And so we baked that cake, and that cake was a lot more than what the county could eat. And so we've taken out a lot of ingredients from the previous plan, because they one size fits all from a comp plan standpoint just does not work for a rural community like Dunn County. And so we are taking an absolute right turn and making certain that our plan recognizes that Dunn County is a rural community, a rural county. And unless there is a substantial outcry differently, that's the direction that we're going to be pursuing, is recognizing the rural part of the county, in addition to the urbanized, but really focusing on the rural aspects of Dunn County from definitions and maybe some of the things we're looking at.
I have a comment.
Sure.
And this is a little part of a larger discussion, but under rural development, and I think we'll get to this perhaps when we get to the recommendations from the groundwater study group. But the only place, I mean, it seems like we want to at least have a discussion about is, can agricultural rural development be something other than intensive animal farming? Isn't there something less than large scale confinement agriculture that can be considered rural development? I just want to throw that in there for further discussion at some point in time.
Yeah, thank you. I had the same concern with the consultant, and we haven't really kind of worked that out yet. But I needed them to to put in the intensive ag, but you're exactly
Yep.
correct. I mean, that's a small part of rural development. A point well taken that there's, you know, just there's agriculture, which rural agriculture, which is
Right.
far more prominent and prevalent than intensive ag. So
Yeah. And I remember a time when a base of diversified farming provided an incredible amount of economic activity in our small towns. And I don't think we should foreclose that from being an option in the future.
point. And I was working on that, but thanks for just bringing it to the committee's attention, and we will be working through that. And so the next time you see this, it could be a little different. And next time you'll have had a chance to maybe think about this a little bit more, and maybe have a little more detailed discussion if you would like.
Sure. Okay.
So thank you. If there's nothing else on that page, okay, here we go. And intensive farming areas. This is I'll be working with land conservation in the state. This is just a holding place for that definition. It's not nearly what I want it to be yet, but it's a holding place. We do need to identify that. And then there's all the other pieces. As you get down now to the natural resources, groundwater, surface water, non-metallic mines, those becomes more some more uses, but we do need to define those terms because they are important terms when we get down into the goals and objectives of the plan. Regulatory, I wanted to bring up, we all know that the main tool that the county uses to implement its comp plan is the zoning ordinance, but that's not the only tool. And realize that this plan it's a long-term plan, and so not everything is going to happen in the first year. It's just not going to. But I did want to bring up an idea, and there's one other that we'll talk about as it comes through the document. I did want to bring up the idea of site plan review standards, because I think that it's going to be additional work, but B, I think it may be, you may find that that's work that down the road may eliminate some work, but it's also work that is going to help the county maybe to get at its goals and objectives. And so what site plan review typically does is zoning right now, we look at the use and the setbacks, and that leaves a building envelope. What the site plan review standards would do is that it would pick up within that building envelope and look at where things are going and how things are put together, so that we'd have a better idea. And so I want to introduce that concept into the plan, and if we need detailed discussions on that in the future, I'd be happy to do that, or if there's questions right now, because that is kind of a new piece.
Bob, is Mike here. A couple of things. First off, on site plan, now, is that the same type of site plan for a different use here that we did discussed in the LOSG study?
You'll have to jog my memory in terms of the site plan in LSG.
Well, we didn't accept anything. We discussed it, talking about how to place things in the envelope, as you just said. So it's the same kind of thing, being able to look at the whole piece.
Correct. It's a clearer picture of what an applicant proposes to do. Yes, and so there may be some parallels.
Okay, and one other thing up in before the regulatory tools, same page. I hope you can put wetlands in whenever you can. I know technically they're listed here, but throw wetlands in there, please. Is when people keep seeing the words, it means more, and I think they're really important.
I'm making a note. Very good. If there's no other questions, we're going into the, just back up one time, Tom, just so I can get the heading here. The future land use plans and maps. And so, so now you can scroll up. And so in addition to the existing land use, and we have a sample of each of these maps for the committee, and we're working on ones for the entire county. And this is going to be, when we get these maps, if you recall the work plan for the comp plan, we be the county, do need to include the local jurisdictions in these discussions, because these land uses affect them, and these land uses may affect future zoning districts, and so these towns need to have a discussion. And so when we get these maps ready, it's going to be take the show on the road, and that's going to be at least minimum of 3 months of just so I can get to each of these towns, because they they meet on sometimes the same nights, and so you can't really get very many in a month. But it's important that the towns be included in the conversation, and not just the maps, but we will show the maps, because that's a piece that is more easily understood by people than necessarily the text. We will certainly talk about the text and how the text reinforces the maps, but we will be taking these maps out once they're finalized to the towns. And then also, I guess I can interject this right now. I think that this document it's ready maybe for some outside scrutiny. As you recall, there's certain individuals that are conservation minded, that are forward thinking minded, and want to be part of the planning process. I think that and we promised that we would include these people, and we have two informational meetings scheduled, on the plan. But I think that I would feel comfortable shipping this out to certain individuals for some comments, and with the understanding that we're not going to be working with them one-on-one necessarily going forward. But if there are concerns and questions that they have right now, before they feel that the plan is cemented, that they have an opportunity to weigh in on it. And so I guess this is a good time just to maybe stop and maybe understand how the committee feels about some outside input.
Bob,
Yes.
just make sure that when you go to the outside comments, that you go to both the different viewpoints, not just the environmentalists and maybe like the Farm Bureau, so that we get a really good understanding of what the people think.
Well, right now, I don't have a committee that's set up, or kind of a working group, and normally we would put together a working group that is a bigger cross section. Right now, all I have is some requests of people that wanted to look at it, and so I don't really know how to address that, Mr. Bjork, unless we start setting up a review committee, or if there are some say, well, let's just broaden it, and you can send it to these people as well. I mean, so because I really don't have a list of others other than those that have said they're interested right now.
Bob, when are you thinking that discussion would be able to start happening?
Well, I guess it's really up to the committee. I mean, coming out of this meeting, if you guys say, yeah, it's a good idea, I see no reason that I wouldn't just, within the next week or two, just package it up and get it out to these people, and then set up a time to have a phone conversation or a meeting with them.
Perhaps before you send it out, you could provide us with a list of anybody who's contacted you, who's interested in it, so that we would have some idea of where it's going. And it may be that members of the committee would want to participate, live in, are part of those groups, whether it's Farm Bureau or another
Yeah.
environmental group or whatever, and may
So-
want to share in the conversation.
How about if I bring that back so that next time and have then I can talk to committee members, and if there are organizations or individuals that you feel, I'll talk to each of you individually that you think might needs to go, then I can pull that list together, bring it back to the committee, and then we can approve of that, and then I can send it out. Or is that too formalized?
Let's start with that. That's fine. Yeah, I don't want to make it burdensome for you, but in a way it might be, we talked about this earlier, that, you know, in a way that process, the process of more open public forums might be as valuable as the town forum. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Public comments and transparency, it's always going to be burdensome, but it's an absolute must that we do that to get buy-in from the community. So so these are the categories that we're going to be talking about and looking at on the land use maps. And so we can scroll down, Tom, please. And this there's going to be a section where those maps will also be displayed. Go ahead. And this is the piece that I really, and this piece is very rough. It's very broad right now, and there's a lot of things in there, that ideas that we're probably, we say, well, we know that, we don't need to include it. But I got everything down on paper right now that I could think of, and knowing that we are going to boil this down and reorganize it. But these future development principles, this is the section of the plan where when we have a request for a rezone from general ag and to residential or some other district, this is going to be the area that is going to be probably the most beneficial to this committee, and also to those that are looking, you know, to make that request as to what's expected of them. These are the things that we're going to be looking at in terms of making those decisions. And so I don't want to necessarily go through each of these today unless you want me to, but I guess what I'm interested in is if you see something that isn't there that you think is important for the committee to use as a checklist in reviewing these, you know, and try to keep them in their own little package if we can, because the things we look at for rural residential probably in some cases are going to be different than what we would look at for commercial or industrial changes. But I want you to know that these will be boiled down and become more concise, and maybe there will be some additions to this list. But these are the discussion points that staff will lead both the applicant and the committee through in terms of making a recommendation and approving of a rezone. So we can scroll down through there. So we do have each of the land uses that we'll have kind of a checklist, if you will, of things to talk about, and then the goals and objectives. And I think this is also a very important piece in the current plan. It was required, you know, for each element that we have goals and objectives, and we struggled sometimes to come up with relevant or meaningful goals and objectives for every element. We are trying to focus really now on the goals and objectives that really deal with land use in the context of Dunn County. And so, you know, so we're going to be looking at, you know, some of the objectives, you know, is it appropriate? Is it going to, how's it going to affect our tax base? Is it going to protect these conservancy areas, environmentally sensitive areas, and other natural resources? Those are important questions that need to be asked. And, you know, can we streamline, you know, the develop and review process? And then we get into recommendations for, you know, for each of these uses. more than anything, is it shown on our plan or a local jurisdictional plan, that's an appropriate use. And if it isn't, then we need to figure out what it is. And there's another new idea, number 3, and it's not necessarily a new idea, but it's something that we really haven't had a chance to really flesh out. And that's, create a document that's maybe a rural living or, Dunn County or, but something, but it's a document that we could give to developers, to landowners, to new committee members, and it kind of explains maybe what it means to live in a rural community, and it, more than right to farm laws, but maybe some of the things that deal with community identity and conserving our rural character, those types of things. But so I think that may be of a benefit both to the committee, but mainly to the general public and to maybe those looking to change land uses that aren't necessarily shown in the plan.
Bob, before you go on to the next page, I've got to say what you were just saying about giving us a better way to look at things, easier way to look at things. I was really impressed with how things are laid out as far as being more specific. The last plan was so general.
It was.
That you could support 6 sides at the same time with the same paragraph. But in particular, the recommendation for rural residential, number 1, high density rural residential. In a couple places in the plan, it refers to 1 acre minimums and this spot here too. Is there any place where conservation subdivisions are encouraged in here? I didn't see any.
Not specifically. I guess I'm, and maybe I'll rely on Tom Carlson because our new subdivision ordinance is coming on board. I don't remember how we dealt with that in the subdivision ordinance. Tom Carlson.
Yeah, right now we don't have any. Obviously somebody can do a conservation subdivision and cluster and put all their residential lots in one area, but we don't have any, I guess, incentive for that to happen, or development credits, or a lot of these conservation type subdivisions allow for more lots than what would be allowed.
Yeah.
In other words, if you could put, they allow you to go down to a lower minimum lot size in exchange for creating a bunch of green space, or
sure.
Maybe
yeah.
urbancy portion on the property, but we don't have anything like that in our draft.
Yeah. So, Mr. Kinnear, Mike, I think that we still can and will put in some language about conservation subdivisions, because if it becomes important or necessary, or people are interested in moving that direction, just the same as what we would do with zoning, then we would amend our ordinance to deal with that. And so I think it's a point well taken. I'll put some language in about conservation. I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention that right now we don't have a mechanism other than at the local level to deal with conservation subdivisions as an option. But it doesn't mean that it won't change over the course of 20 years. So yes, we will mention conservation subdivisions. So while I'm just writing this down, anything else on this page? Okay, Mr. Carlson, thank you. And again, a very long laundry list, and I apologize, but I do want to bring your attention to item number 15 on this page. And this is in the wrong place, but let me just back up before I do that. With Mike Kinnear's comments, about some specificity in this, and I've had some arm wrestling discussions with the consultant, and in a very positive sense. He thought that some of these were also very detailed compared to what he normally uses in a plan. But I explained to him, I says, but it's important. I says, because these are ideas that I have taken notes on over the course of the last probably 10 years. And a lot of these have come up time and time again. I said, so we need to find a way to put these in a more specific manner. And so we are being probably a little more specific than maybe what is traditional. But I think I agree with Mr. Kinnear. I think it's important to get down to some of that specificity. And in the end, if it needs to be more general, it's easier to take stuff out than it is to put it back in, or to put it in the end. So now I just want us to move down to item number 15, and it shouldn't be adopt a planned unit development, a PUD ordinance. You know, it would probably be a chapter that deals with planned unit developments, and I put this in, and it needs to be in a more prominent location. But I put this in because we had discussions. I don't know if you remember those or not. I certainly do. Maybe back when we started, we're getting ready to start this process and going out maybe to hire a consultant to help out. Paul Miller was in speaking about land use and land use decisions and some tools, and brought up the notion of planned unit development. I've worked with PUDs in the past in other jurisdictions, and they have some pluses and minuses. I think in general, what, you know, for those that aren't familiar with the planned unit development, what that does, if we had that language, is it's kind of a negotiating type of language where we, the county, would consider bending the rules for you, the developer, provided you, the developer, give the county something in return. And so it's a decent tool if it's used properly, and if the standards are worked out. So it will show up somewhere else in the plan. It doesn't belong right here, but I wanted to bring that to the committee's attention. And then now we go down, we can scroll down. These are just
Bob.
Yes.
Bob, one question, number 13.
Go ahead. Go back up, please, Tom. Yes.
I would add on number 13, and such impacts can be mitigated.
I'm sorry, you're muted, Mr. Kinnear.
That's language that, can you hear me now again?
I do.
Okay. And such impacts can be mitigated is language used down below.
Okay.
Number 3. Just add that into number 13, would
Okay.
seem reasonable.
Okay, got that.
And Bob, I have one question on number 12.
Sure.
Just on that, ratio, is that ratio at 20:1? Is that on area, like acres, or is that like on like one farm unit to one non-farm unit? What is that ratio of?
That's the base farm tract, and that's probably going to fall out. It's more for a reminder. It's in the ordinances, but I didn't want to. I wanted to have everything in here to begin with. So the 20:1, for those that are in intensive ag, it's your base farm tract, and so you take your base farm tract, however big that is, and you divide it by 21, and that's the number of non-farm acreage that you, the landowner, are allotted for development for non-farm uses, and then there's some other restrictions in terms of just how many non-farm uses are allowed. But that's the formula that says how much land you have in your holdings that can be dedicated or considered to be non-farm use.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can scroll down. And then we're getting into and these are things just from discussions, with your group on groundwater. I will certainly tighten these up with both with the committee and with the group that's working on these, over there in land and water conservation. But these are holding places. I don't think that there's anything major missing, but if there is, we will pick those up through those discussions. Go ahead. Environmentally sensitive areas, I think last time, I think Supervisor Morehouse had a question about, mapping those and where that's going to happen. And I think we need to, we did a study where we went back and we defined what this could be. I don't think that we've gone any further than that. And one of the components of what could be considered environmentally sensitive is that it needs to be something that is mappable, so that we can talk about it in a realistic context. So I think that it would be important to come back, with this plan as an action item for, coming out of the plan is to take the next step and either accept that definition countywide and then move towards mapping those environmentally sensitive areas, and then figuring out, once they're mapped, what kind of language that we need to do to manage those areas, because those will probably be areas that are significantly different than the conservancy areas, and so it's important. It'll be important that we start with the definition and then move to the mapping and then move to the language to help manage those areas. So and then I think we need to here I just kind of laid out some recommendations for site plan review standards, and again, it's a long laundry list, and it's probably going to be substantially different. But in the beginning, I just tried to give a very broad understanding of what this might encompass, and where it ends up at, if it even ends up in the plan, is yet to be determined. So scroll down, please. And then I think this may be the last piece, code enforcement. I think it's important, that our plan recognizes that this plan is going to influence, codes, and for me, it's going to be our zoning codes, our shoreland codes, our wetland code, floodplain. It's going to impact, but there are other codes across the county that may come into play, and it's important that we recognize in the plan the need to keep our codes consistent and up to date with the plan. I think that may be the last page there. Any questions on the plan? And I just wanted to briefly walk through the mapping with you. Any other questions, concerns about where we're headed with this section of the plan? And just kind of FYI, we're doing a kind of a modified or a selective amendment process just because of resources and time, and so the pieces that are going to be substantially overhauled are going to be the demographics, because those do change with census data, and so we do have that section, and I will present that next time, is pretty well finished. And then the land use section is the other piece that really needed a complete overhaul. Some of the other ones, they're going to be minimally affected, but really just removing some of the fluff that was necessary to take some of the state's money. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time on land use. This section is one that directly affects the work of both staff and this committee. So and as does demographics. Demographics kind of loads, in some respects, loads the gun regarding land use decisions, and so those two elements are substantially different. So last chance for questions, comments about the text portion of it as we've presented so far. At least the last chance for today. So the next piece, and this is, I think this is just stellar in my opinion, in terms of being able to look at existing land uses in a very broad sense, and in under the lens that I think that this committee has shown interest in, and it's not tailored just to the committee because you're interested, but because the areas that you are interested in deal with the land use decisions that come before you on an annual basis or a regular basis. So from an existing land use, we'll start with, there's a lot of residences out there, and this is the town of Sand Creek. Town of Sand Creek does not have a major subdivision, and so all of the residences that are out there came about because they were permitted in one of the agricultural districts, either the ones that preceded what we have now or in the current GA. And so when you're looking at residences, where there is not a major subdivision shown, what we're really looking at is a mixed use of the land, because that zoning district, general ag, it's a mixed use. It does allow limited residential, but it's really an agriculture district. And so you can see in Sand Creek, and this is going to be the same for a big chunk of Dunn County, that a lot of it is agriculture, mixed use with some limited residential. There are some institutional aspects, churches, cemeteries, town halls, institutional pieces, and they're sprinkled around this community, as they are in probably every town. Commercial, if I need to, I can zoom up, but we will have a blow up of the unincorporated village of Sand Creek, and so you can see in there some very detailed existing land uses. So you can see that there are some commercial, mostly residential, some institutional. There's the library. There's the downtown area. So you can see, that we're pretty finite in terms of the way we're looking at land as to the way that we had in the past, and also. The technology has really come along, and the resources that when we publish these maps, they're also going to be available electronically, so that we can scale up to this detail on a parcel and really see what's happening, which is something that we really didn't have the ability to the degree that we have back when we first did the plans. So now you can see how the town of the unincorporated village of Sand Creek shakes out in terms of existing land uses. And here, we also, we separated out from the land uses. We did separate, go one more out, please. There we go. I just want to get to the key so we could see that. And so you can see, oh, it's okay. You're good right there. So we all understand commercial, industrial, agriculture, and then, but we did differentiate between conservancy and forest lands on here, and that's the reason we did that is because definition of agriculture includes forest as an agricultural product, and so it didn't seem that we would want to include all the woodlands in the conservancy area if we're trying, if the goal of the county is to control and limit development in the conservancy areas. So we can see the conservancy areas different than the forested areas, and we're working on maybe some better depicting those in some shapes and colors that's a little bit more easier to use, but just so that we understand that those are two different existing land uses. Okay, the next map, please, if there's no questions on that one. Go ahead. Is there one more? Oh, this is the future. I was looking at the title up, and I'm sorry. This is the future land use. So so I think if we zoom up on the only real change in this area is going to be near that little unincorporated village of Sand Creek, where we're really proposing anything different than agriculture in Sand Creek. And so the hatched areas, we're really just showing, the downtown areas. There could be some more commercial in there. We're not looking for any industrial in Sand Creek. The demographics don't show that there's a need for that. They really don't show that there's this much need for residential, but this is just showing that we found areas around Sand Creek that are outside of maybe Conservancy, where if there is growth, that this is probably where we would like it to happen, in and around the unincorporated village. But realize that the rest of Sand Creek, we're really planning for that to be agriculture. And if somebody comes in with a large subdivision or an industrial application or a commercial endeavor, then the committee would look at those checklists and that review process to see if that's appropriate for this jurisdiction to have those uses, because they won't be shown on the future land use. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we're headed with this. The graphics are probably going to be refined as we go along, but questions, comments maybe about, I guess I would like to hear at least a comment, if there are any, about the Conservancy areas, if that makes sense, what we've included in there, steep slopes, wetlands, floodplains, mapped wetlands and floodplains. And if that makes sense, we can at least keep it there. Or if you think that maybe we need to maybe have flatter slopes, maybe less than 20%, we can do any or all of those things. So questions or concerns, comments, just about maybe, I guess specifically, separating the forest lands from the Conservancy areas. Any heartburn?
Sounds like we're okay for now.
Great.
That can be on the table. So.
All right. I realize that it's kind of sprung on you at the 11th hour, but do think about those things. And as we progress through this, please do bring them to my attention. So if there's nothing else, Mr. Chair, I think that concludes my report on the land use.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob. Let's move on to item C then, which is the accessory dwelling unit discussion.
And what I would like to do is to share my screen, because I didn't have a chance to really flesh this out for you. I had a conversation with Tom Quinn about what I was intending to show on here, and so with permission, I'd like to go to a document that I've created since you guys have received this.
Sure.
All right. So, can everyone see it?
Yep.
Okay. Is it big enough that you can read it? Do I need to make it bigger?
I think it's fine, Bob.
All right. So
Accessory dwelling units, or
ADUs, we've had several discussions on this, and but there hasn't really been a lot of discussion about what we could do to maybe permit this or accept this. And so there's a lot of different understandings of ADUs. A lot of the information that I find on ADUs, the county's already addressed, because it deals with allowing small homes, and the county, we went back when we redid the current ordinance, we took out any references to minimum square footage for homes, and took the position that affordable housing is affordable housing. And if you want to live in a phone booth and it's affordable housing, you can live in a phone booth. And so the county has already addressed a lot of the concerns that maybe other communities are wrestling with in terms of affordable housing, and a cookie cutter saying, well, you got to have a certain footprint in order to be a residence in. And so we've already addressed that. But what we haven't addressed, and this is the piece that comes up 8 to 10 times a year, is my loved one, my family member is aging in place, and we'd like to have them age in place, and we'd like to have them next to other family members. Can we do that? And the answer has been, well, no, we won't allow a second residence on your property. There are other things you can do. You can modify your property, or you can split your property, but no, we're not going to allow the second residence on there. And I think that's probably the foundation that we want to kind of at least build on. And so what I'd like to do is walk you through maybe a possible amendment which would bring the Board of Adjustment into this conversation. And the reason that I think that the BOA it would be an important group to bring into the discussion is because they have the ability to place conditions on applications or requests. And so our ordinance could set some basic standards, which we typically do anyway, and then those items would come before the board. They would hear them, and if there were concerns other than the standards that are being met, they can place conditions on there. It's also important to realize, that a BOA decision goes with the land and not the landowner, so that if the board grants a permit for an ADU, and the land changes, and the next person thinks, well, man, I just have a home I can rent to anybody, and it becomes a problem. If we can't, we being zoning, if we can't get them to comply with the terms of the permit that the BOA handed out, then we can bring them back to the BOA, where the BOA could make some sterner recommendations, or they could pull the permit. And so I think that the BOA could play a significant role in how we would deal with ADUs. And I think that we could do it from the two areas that they deal with: a variance, an area variance, or special exception. And I think that we should consider them in this order, that we would look for a variance first, because a variance is just bending the rules, so to speak, some of them. So I'll walk through maybe the variance and then a little bit about the special exception. And so it's important to understand that in variances that the request can't be self-imposed. Well, I can't put what I want at this location because there's a really nice tree and I don't want to take it down. And it's like, as much as we'd like to save the trees, that's a self-imposed hardship. And so issues that aren't considered self-imposed are topography, the surface water, wetlands, floodplains, to some degree, where the utilities, your well is located, your septic is located. Some of those things, come into play in terms of what is self-imposed. But I think that we could consider some language to allow ADUs with a variance, and so one would be, if they don't have enough land to split. In the R1, in every other district, well, all the districts require a 1 acre minimum. The GA requires some other things in terms of order to split it, but we'll start with the 1 acre minimum. So if they don't have 2 acres, they can't split it, even if they wanted to. They can't split it to create that parcel. So I think we could support, have language that says, that we would support a variance for this use. We'd have to define the ADU, what that use is, but we would support that, allow you to create a parcel or parcels, less than 1 acre, and if your parent parcel is less than 2. And just to start the discussion, in our shoreline ordinance, this and this is because the state said this is what you will put in there, a minimum area for a parcel in our shoreland that is not served by public utilities can be as small as 20,000 square feet. So that may be something that if we were to have language about a variance, that maybe we would go down to at least that size. I would recommend that we don't go any smaller than what our current ordinances have in terms of minimum lot size, but that's something that we could consider. And I think the other piece is because, you know, these people are coming and saying, well, this is a specialized use. We want you to bend the rules for ADU. Typically those discussions that have been for, well, you know, I just need an apartment sized place or a small place, you know, for my grandmother, my mother, my father, you know, or somebody that can live. And so these aren't 3 and 4 bedroom homes. So these are smaller homes, and I think that if we're going to bend the rules, that we bend the rules for the intent of why we're bending them. Is that then I think we should be having some definitions and maybe some minimum sizes or maximum sizes for what these homes could be, so that they follow the intent of why we're bending the rules. Or, you know, in the case of our GA district, you know, if you have less than 8 acres, even though our minimum lot size is 1 acre, we're not going to let you split that. And so there's a significant number of people that would consider splitting the land, but our ordinances doesn't allow them. And so here we would support a variance where one or both those parcels could be 1 acre. And if they can't, then I think that we would look at number I above in terms of how to deal with in the GA where we have parcels that are 2 acres or less, where they can't create a legal size parcel. And then the last piece is sometimes, you know, it's setback issues that are in their way. And so I can create the parcel, but there's not enough building envelope to meet the requirements. And so I think that we would also consider maybe looking at a variance for setbacks. And if none of that works, and they still want to move down there, then I think that we would consider a special exception to allow them to put a second home on the parcel, because the variance, we can't find a way to get it to work otherwise. But there again, I think it would be important that we recognize that this is for a very specific use. We're not doing this so that in 5 years, when the need changes, that you now have a full-blown rental property on your property. So and then I think that, you know, we need to talk about maybe, you know, garages, limiting also the size of the garage. If it's a very small place, make it a single garage. What we're trying to do, at least, is to say that going forward, you know, because we all know that none of us are going to live forever, and we all know that people move around quite a bit. But once this ADU is in place, we would like to know that it's going to pretty much stay that use going forward. And so we want to kind of restrict the opportunities for people to reconstruct, remodel, and make it into something larger than what was intended when it was first built or issued or permitted. So questions about maybe ADUs and maybe this scenario of walking down and bringing the BOA into the mix.
Robert?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Burke.
So what's going to happen, like, once grandma goes to the nursing home? So how are you going to, you know, like, use that building? Maybe I didn't understand it, or I wasn't paying attention, but they're not just going to let it sit there.
Nope.
If it's a separate building.
Yep.
how is it going to be utilized?
Correct. And that's why I say that it's important, because yeah, you're exactly right. That use is going to change over time. Grandma's going to go somewhere else, and then that space is going to get freed up. I don't think that the county needs to be or wants to be so heavy-handed to say that, well, no, sorry, but unless you get another grandma, you can't use it. I think that and that's the reason that I'm suggesting that we limit the size of it to the use, so that when grandma does go to the healthcare center, the neighbors and lives there, and the space is vacant, what you're not going to be getting is a large family, those types of things. You're going to be getting a use, with a small efficiency size space with limited room. You're going to be getting someone that is similar in the way they would use it, maybe not age wise, but in the way that they're going to use the property, which wouldn't be a substantial change to the neighbors having this new person in there that's not grandma anymore. So yeah, I think that we would say, well, yeah, you can rent it out, you can use it, but we want to make sure that it's going to stay fairly close to why it was even created in the first place. Did that answer your
Makes a lot
question?
of sense.
Okay.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Bob, I'm a little confused. So if you create under the variance, if you create a new parcel, how would you assure that parcel was not sold just as an individual parcel in the future? Or would that
We
happen?
wouldn't. We wouldn't need to, but because the
And
BOA.
then how would you then control the future expansion, development, or use of that property?
Right. So that's why I think it's important that the Board of Adjustment is part of this process, because the board would say, okay, we're going to allow you to create a parcel that is non-conforming, that is smaller than the minimum lot size. But these are the conditions, and that has to be used. It can be sold, but it's going to be sold, and that the unit that's on there is going to be of this size, or they may say that they would allow, expansion once it's sold, a certain size. But that's where the conditions of the BOA would come into play. And if zoning is brought into the mix because of a complaint that it's not fitting in the neighborhood anymore, and we can't get the landowner to comply voluntarily, then we would bring them back to the BOA and have the board deal with that violation.
So in some places where they allow some entities where they allow these, they have a provision which says that going forward, for example, in the special exception category, where you allow a accessory unit that's on the same site,
Yeah.
that going forward, that use is continued, provided that at least one of those units is occupied by the person who owns the parcel.
And
Which
we
seems to
can
me
certainly
like
put those in the standards, when we develop this. Absolutely, that language could be included. Either in the ordinance or as a condition from the BOA, and if it's in the ordinance, normally the BOA just reinforces it, in their deliberations. But absolutely, we, if that's a direction that the county wants to pursue, that's not an issue at all. We could certainly include that.
I can see problems with either way of doing it, but
yeah, it's
this
not
looks like
clean. It's not absolutely clean, but I think I think we're looking for a way to really address a need.
Yep.
that is really in the community.
Yep. Any other comments by the committee members? So what's your thought, Bob, going? I know this is something that's come up, and I know that we know there are people who are looking forward to getting something like this in place so they can move on with their lives.
Right.
What's your thought about next steps?
Well,
this is
I'm
the
not
first
look-
time the committee's seen this.
Yes, it is the first time the committee has seen this, and so I'm not looking for work, but realizing that that it's necessary. I believe it is that's something that the county needs to do, something more than just say, well, I'm sorry, but you need to just split your parcel, because that's not always possible. So I would say that the direction would be that without a hard and fast timeline, that one of the things that the committee could say is like, why don't you take this to the next step and start fleshing out maybe what an ordinance amendment would look like, and then bring it back to us, and I could bring it back monthly and say nothing has happened, but bring it back and keep you up to speed as to where we're at. It's not a huge thing in order to get the language, but it does take time, and I just can't guarantee that I can get it done in even 2 months, but I can guarantee you that we will get it done this calendar year. It's important, and hopefully, during this building season, to help people that are in that situation right now.
Okay. I think the committee can support that. I do have one question.
Sure.
Under our current situation, that this type of unit would not be eligible for consideration by the committee, by the Board of Adjustment. There's no way you could ask for a.
You can't
variance?
ask for a special exception. I think that they could be asking for a variance, but we haven't really kind of fleshed out maybe some
Right.
of the conditions that would be there. So it could be different every time if we don't
Yep.
provide some standards. So, but
Gotcha.
that option is available right now to some
Okay.
degree.
All right. Any other questions for the committee? Thanks, Bob, for bringing us back. I think we all appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Your sanitation data entry discussion.
This is pretty much the Bob Colson show today.
It
Man,
is.
man.
Starring.
Yeah, I
Showing out your
should have
local
got a really big introduction or something, and come out with a monologue.
Yeah.
And but
Will be credits at the end of the Zoom. They'll have your name all over.
next time. So this is a follow-up to the discussion we've been having just about the amount of work that we're trying to get done. We've looked at avenues of how else we could get it done in the department, and it's just not working out. And so, well, it's not that it's not working out. It's just that the other managers really don't feel comfortable saying, I can guarantee you that over the course of the year, that when you need somebody, I can give them to you at the tune of 6 or 8 weeks out of the year. And so without that guarantee in place, it's I'm still stuck at pretty much the same position I'm at right now, that it's just not going to get done. It's going to continue to pile up. And so I think that there's 3 options, and maybe there's a 4th or 5th. I haven't found it yet. And I'll just be blunt, that of the options, my preference for I think for the good of the department, of the division, is to have a county employee, whether it's full-time or part-time. In this case, we're looking at a part-time. It just allows it allows more control, more flexibility in terms of other things that come up in the course of a day, over the course of the year, that if there was a county employee, you can have them help out. If it's a consultant, or a contracted employee, they're there for one thing and one thing only, and that's pretty much all I'm going to be able to get out of that person. And then the other kind of downfall, at least in terms of a temp person, is this is it's hard to plan for this work, because at the detail that in terms of trying to get somebody to do the work, because it comes in in bunches, or and that's when you need it. And also, we don't know the mix of who didn't send in and who has, and so it's hard to say that once a week we're going to need this temp person for X number of hours. It could be that some weeks we don't need them, and they wouldn't come in. And so I think one of the problems that we're going to see with that type of work request is that I go to the temp agency and say I need somebody next week. They send me a person next week. We train that person, and then they're there for 8 hours and they go away. And the next time that we need somebody, because it's such a short amount of time, the person we got last time is temping somewhere else because there's more opportunity. We get a second person and have to start over, just on the loop of training all the time. I think that's a real possibility and probably a reality of going to the temp services for this little bit of work, and I can't guarantee when we're going to need it. I also looked at at maybe how much time, if a quarter time, a 20% person or a 10% person, based off of what we'd have to pay them, what it would cost per year, also about what we think for about 6 weeks out of a year, what it would cost for temp services. And you could see those figures right there. There's kind of a wrinkle to all of this that happened just last week. I got notice from Michelle. Really good news, bittersweet. She's pregnant. And I can share that with the committee now. She's expecting in July, at the end of July. She's planning on 2 months of maternity leave, but she can take up to 3. I talked to Mr. Miller about this, and I think we need to plan for 3 months of maternity leave. That's going to really put a kibosh on the division. Losing 1/3 of your staff for 3 months during the busy time of the year is going to be problematic. We are contracting. We have a contract now in place with Cedar Corporation to do sanitation inspections. They have individuals that are qualified to do those inspections, and so the inspection work, we're fairly certain that we'll be able to pick up that work. The other work that she does in-house, I'm not sure. It's probably going to fall on my desk, which means that there's going to be things that are going to get pushed back, and so we may be in a position just by default that zoning inspections become pretty lengthy. We also have a contract, as you know, with Cedar Corporation for expedited zoning inspections where we do have them come in and do it. But I can't make an applicant choose expedited if they choose to go the general route. And even knowing when we tell them it's going to be a long time, some people are going to get impatient. So I just want the committee to understand that that's a possibility as we get into the heat of the building season, when the workload really ramps up. And I also want to say that I'm going to be having a discussion with admin to see what we can do about this, because this shines a very bright light on a distinct possibility that has happened and could happen to in other instances where one staff person in the division is out for an extended period of time. it really cripples the ability to get work done in a timely manner, or restricts the amount of work, the scope of work that we can get at in a timely manner. So I'll be having discussions with admin about maybe what to do either this year, but certainly if we can't resolve something this year, to put a staff request into next year's budget. And it may be that it would be a single staff person that was either full-time or more towards full-time, maybe an inspector, and then that person would be able to pick up a lot of the work that's being done, that's being presented, that we're not being able to get at, with the secretary. So I was kind of hoping, that with this discussion that it would be a more focused discussion, and that there would be a better direction. But I don't know that I'm looking for that now, just given the circumstances. That I think that I do need to have a more broader discussion with admin, and then bring that back to the committee. But I will turn that over to committee now for questions, comments about this, or just staffing in general.
Mr. Colson,
Yes,
Robert?
sir. Yes, sir.
that a quarter time, at 520 hours, would that person have any extra time after doing the data entry process? Would she have any extra time, or would that take all of her time?
Well, I think there would be extra time to do other things in the office. Picking up things that have been absorbed by the rest of the staff. So yes, I think that there would be at 10 hours a week on a fixed schedule. Yes, that person would be doing more than just data entry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Diane.
with the situation with Michelle notwithstanding at this point, assuming that we were to hire a part-time county employee to do this, this would be outside, this would be something in addition to the unfilled positions we currently have? Be a new part-time position?
Well, if it was, there is a vacant secretary position, and so if you were to hire a part-time secretary, and that's what the numbers in terms of a FTE, those are county numbers in terms of what the salary would be, and so that would just go into a secretary position that's in the org chart rather than creating something.
Okay, all right, thank you, Bob.
So Bob, I hear you saying that, I was expecting that we probably you would be asking us to recommend that we do a funding request for this position, but you're saying let's wait on that until you have a conversation with admin?
Yeah, I think it's much broader now, just
Okay.
given the news, and I think it would be in your best interest to hold off on this. We're not looking to do this in 2 weeks anyway. I mean,
Okay.
so I think it would be in the committee's best interest to get a much broader view of staffing and the implications.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Diane.
If you permit me another dumb question, wouldn't it, however, improve the case with admin if the committee were to offer up some kind of recommendation on this at this point?
Certainly, I think that any kind of political support that the committee can provide, I think is absolutely some clout that would substantiate the argument for a need for staff. And so if the committee is support, I guess I would, and thank you for bringing this up, I think I would like to know if the committee is supportive of additional staff, regardless of and I think we're looking at at one additional staff, but I mean, would the committee, is the committee supportive of some sort of resource to help out with staffing in the division here? and maybe that's not what you're asking, Diane, I don't know.
Well, it is, and I will defer to the chair to see how we want to act on this, but I think
Yeah, I know.
our staffing
Yeah.
situation is getting really critical, and I would be supportive of us doing what is appropriate to make this case about the sufficient staff to get at least a kind of a handle on our workload.
Totally support that. I mean, it seems like we supported your effort and the department's effort to put these numbers together so we know what's needed and how it's going to work and come up with a workable solution. So I think a motion to support, unless someone wants to make this, articulate this, but a motion to support the additional staff capacity for the, yes, you want it for your division, Bob, Planning and Zoning Division?
Well, maybe a point of order. It wasn't agended for an action item. It's a staff report. And so it may be that a motion might be out of place. I don't know.
I don't think we're taking an action. We're just making a recommendation. So
okay, all right.
The motion is framed in the if it's recommends that the Department of Administration explore options for adding additional staff to the Planning and Zoning Division to address these needs, something like that.
So moved.
And I will happily second.
Okay.
I wonder if instead of a motion and a second, just a thumbs up would be more in order. Seated as an agenda.
I'm fine with that. So the intention is the important thing, not the formality of it. So
if you had unanimous thumbs up, you could say that to admin.
Right. Okay. So we have the intention. We have the direction, the recommendation, and is that support? If you support that, raise your hand. Looks unanimous to me. If you don't, and so people who don't support it, okay. So that's make the record be that we voted for it, or that we expressed support for it. We didn't vote for it. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that we don't limit it to just a quarter time. Maybe even like
Right.
A half time might come up too.
Let's just say additional staff support.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's how I understood it, Mr. Chair, that it was just additional, that we're not looking at any specificity yet in terms of quarter time, full time, but just additional, have them look at
Right.
additional staff. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could we add to our thumbs up at admin's earliest possible convenience?
that's already
That's fine
that's
with
already
me.
going to happen
Get on it.
for me. But you can certainly include it. I told Mr. Miller coming out of this meeting that I would reach out to him and look to schedule a meeting at admin to have this discussion.
Yeah.
So
I think there's some urgency. It's a good point, Diane. So you may convey that as well. Okay. Review of groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations.
oh, phew, it's not me this time.
Yeah, you're rest.
Thank you, committee. I'm
Who's gonna do
but I'm
this?
coming
Tracy, you
back.
do this?
So
Good morning, everybody. I'm here to relieve you for a minute, Bob. Thank you for the meeting this morning, and just want to give you an update. I did type up a brief paragraph regarding the groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations, and I can provide a little more context or content for that. As I transition to getting comfortable with staff and understanding our roles and responsibilities, I'm looking toward these type of recommendations to better understand where our staff fits in and get some sort of direction established. So at this point in time, internal discussions are continuing, but we have not made any particular progress to specifically report on. Other than I would add that this time of year is quite a busy time for many farms as well as some of our staff regarding nutrient management planning. And I know that is an element as part of these recommendations, looking at 100% coverage by nutrient management plans. And Travis Dreyer in our office is responsible for receiving nutrient management plans from farms, and the deadline typically is April 1st. So this is the busy time of year that we're getting plans in, and he's and other staff are needing to review those. And also with regards to Bob's discussion earlier regarding the comprehensive plan, there are elements on the recommendations here regarding that comprehensive plan, and particularly related to water resources. And as Bob alluded to earlier, I'll be happy to participate in those conversations to get the correct and appropriate recommendations into that plan as well. So unless you have other particular questions on this agenda item, I think you may find the next agenda item related to the groundwater ad hoc to some degree, and of importance as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kinnear.
Yeah, Chase, I can't imagine how busy you've been, and you probably go to sleep at night dreaming about the things you're doing. So this isn't a complaint. I just, in the future, it's nice to have it up on the screen and look at it. It's not, in fact, the staff knows about it maybe more than we do sometimes, because you see it more often. But it's for us to kind of look at it again and keep reminding us, giving us some continuity, review what we've done, what's going on. We might come up with questions by looking at these things that, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I wonder what's happening here. So like I mentioned to Dan one other time, as we go through this, whether it's you or Tom, Carlson or Bob, it's nice to have it up and just go through it, even if it's 2 minutes, to give us a chance. But I have no complaints here at all. I think you're doing a great job, and it's got to be overwhelming. So just keep that in mind for the future from my point of view, please.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. I appreciate the feedback, and it's nice to know that you have concerns and letting me know what you would like to see. So I'll be sure to include that at the next time. So thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? All right, Chase, why don't you move on to the next item then?
Okay, the next item is a report regarding NR 151, which is the state administrative code for ag performance standards and prohibitions. One of the main areas that we in the Land and Water Conservation Division work in. The bulk of our work is to ensure compliance or work with landowners to achieve compliance with these ag performance standards and prohibitions. And currently that rule is open for revision to incorporate proposed targeted performance standards regarding nitrate, and particularly nitrate leaching to groundwater. That rule is open right now for public comment, March 8th through April 10th. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because it does have particular relationship with Dunn County, and not only the groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations, but many of the other planning documents that we have through our division, as well as the focus on groundwater recently. And I'd like to kind of go through some of those details and explain what I know at this point for the impacts that it may have on Dunn County. And you also should know that while formerly employed with Pepin County, and currently still do serve on the technical advisory committee for this rule revision. I was invited based on my past work to participate on that technical advisory. And there is another meeting coming up this Thursday that I'll continue to participate in to better understand how the rule may move forward. So Tom, if you wouldn't mind skipping to the next one. In your packet, I included this summary of the proposed rule changes, and this can be found on the DNR's website under their rule revision process. So I won't spend a lot of time with each slide that is presented here. That's more for your information, but I will kind of pick out some of the highlights as we move forward and how it may pertain to Dunn County. So the proposed rule basically looks at reducing groundwater pollution, groundwater contamination by nitrates in specifically targeted areas within the state of Wisconsin, with the sole intent to achieve compliance with the groundwater standard of 10 milligrams per liter. And I'll remind you that 10 milligrams per liter is the enforcement standard for groundwater contamination of nitrate. And actually the preventative action limit is 2 milligrams per liter. That is based on general background or natural background levels of groundwater tend to be between 1 and 2 milligrams per liter nitrate. And anything above that is realized as impacts that we as humans have on the landscape. Go ahead, Tom. So a little background on the rule and considerations for targeted areas. Mainly where we're looking at, and I'll show a map later here, is we're looking at areas particularly related to Dunn County that have soils that are susceptible to groundwater contamination. So looking at highly permeable soils, as well as agricultural fields that are located in nitrogen restricted areas. Nitrogen restricted areas are defined currently in the proposed rule by the township level. And a map I will show you later I'll further explain where those areas are. Those areas may or may not include soils that have high permeability, but they do have in those areas groundwater testing or sampling data that indicates elevated levels of nitrate. And also, if you would go back one more, Tom, real quick, just to point out that any municipal wellhead protection plan would also be included in these areas, especially when those water systems reach that 5 milligrams per liter nitrate contamination. Feel free to go ahead, Tom. Thank you. You can go one more. I'll show this map in more detail later, but as you can see, Dunn County has a lot of green or sensitive areas, and this would be a nitrate targeted soils area. If you want to keep clicking through, Tom, a couple more, there's a little bit closer view of parts of the state here. You can go further to the next text slide. Okay, so again, just a reminder what the goal is, is to achieve groundwater quality contamination for nitrate of less than 10 milligrams per liter. And the intent of how this will be done will be through NR 151 and the implementation of nutrient management plans. Go ahead, Tom. So this sets a nitrate leaching limit. If you're familiar with nutrient management planning right now, there is a what's called a PI or a phosphorus index. This is related to surface water and how the landscape is used and managed in a way to reduce phosphorus from moving off the landscape and reaching surface water. In a related scenario, the intent of this proposed rule will follow those same setups as far as a PI index. And instead, it will be related to nitrate. And it will look at trying to limit the loss of nitrogen or nitrate to less than 2.2 pounds of nitrate per acre per inch of groundwater. And what this is basically the equivalent of the amount of nitrate that could leach below the root zone and create a 10 milligram per liter concentration in groundwater. So knowing that limit and how many pounds of nitrate may be lost gives a good indication for the goal that needs to be achieved. Go ahead, Tom. Why don't you click one more, please? So a producer's nutrient management plan, those that I related to earlier that are being turned in right now by a lot of farms across the county, must incorporate and include and consider all nutrients that are applied to those croplands, pasture lands, and in this case, for the proposed rule, will be cropland, pasture land, and winter grazing land. And Also, as that relates to, must account for all the nitrogen that's introduced to the crop, which includes irrigation water. So in parts of the state, particularly the Central Sands, south of Stevens Point area, they're already crediting nitrate or nitrogen concentrations in groundwater as it goes towards their nitrogen balance for crops. And the same thing is proposed in this rule to continue throughout the state, which would impact us in many of our irrigated cropland areas. Go ahead, Tom. So as I mentioned, some of the prohibitions would be that no commercial fertilizer and liquid manure may be applied to fields in the fall and winter when there is no need for nitrogen. So basically that'll be implemented through a nutrient management plan. No fertilizer or manure could be applied in those targeted areas. So soils that have, particularly related to manure, soils that are coarse textured, highly permeable, which have been mapped and are used currently in nutrient management plans, as well as within shallow depths to bedrock, close to community wells, and other municipal wellhead protection areas. Go ahead, Tom. The prohibition on nutrient applications for commercial fertilizer would be after September 1. It would not be allowed, with several exceptions that would include fall seeded crops, any cover crops that would be in a potato rotation to reduce soil fumigants. So typically before potatoes are planted, the ground is fumigated. And currently there are cover crop species and varieties that can achieve similar results as a chemical fumigant, but through a natural cover crop way. So allowing nitrogen to be applied after September 1 to allow those types of crops to grow would be an exception. And as well as any perennial crops, so particularly related to pastures, where we have continuously pastured ground or part of a rotational grazing, nitrogen may be allowed at 36 pounds per acre in some of those particular locations. Next one, please, Tom. Some of the similar things here regarding liquid manure. After September 1, no liquid manure would be allowed to be applied to cropland. This is probably going to be one of the more contentious parts of this proposed rule, as you can imagine. A lot of the liquid manure is applied all the way up through October, in some cases November, and depending on weather and farms need to get that liquid manure land applied. In some cases, winter application is still occurring, and those are for individuals that are on a daily haul situation and may or may not have adequate storage to get through the winter months. In this proposed rule, that would not be allowed anymore with the following exceptions, and those would include fall seeded crops, again, established cover crops or established hay ground. And then it may be limited, liquid manure could be applied one time in the fall after September 1st at a reduced rate of 25% of what is allowed in the nutrient management plan. So again, referring back to the nutrient management plan as kind of the key document in establishing and implementation of this rule. Go ahead, Tom. So this is just a timeline quick for the process. This slideshow was put together earlier in the year, and obviously as rules are revised, those timelines can adjust. So as you'll look at the public comment period, we're in the stages currently right now. In early March, late February is when the economic analysis review was completed, which you can find on the website as well. And as you can see, we're looking at September, potential the Natural Resources Board would take this up. And as far as actual implementation, should everything go through, another rule would need to be revised under DATCAP, be ATCP 50, which then would allow for us as counties, and particularly land and water conservation divisions, give us the guidance and guidelines for implementation. And one thing I did not mention regarding all of these prohibitions is that they would not be required unless a formal offer of kosher would be offered by our department or some other agency within the state. That is true for NR 151, the administrative code currently. And as these new rules would be adopted, kosher would be offered. So again, a limiting factor for much of the implementation within the state is based on just funds and staff capacity. Tom, I think that's probably the last slide, if I'm correct. Yep. If you wouldn't mind, allow me to share my screen, and I'll bring up one more map to show some details. Are you able to see the NR 151 rule change?
Yep.
Okay. So if this is the website for DNR, I'll scroll down real quick. Here is a area map viewer. I'll pull this up. Just have to agree to some terms. And you should be able to, you should see the entire state of Wisconsin right now with a bunch of pink coloring on the map. And I'll zoom into Dunn County. So anything that is in pink on this map would be considered a proposed targeted area, meaning that it meets those criteria for highly permeable soils or depth to bedrock being shallow or within proximity of a municipal well or a wellhead protection area. So as you can see, parts of our county are highly impacted by this proposed rule. And actually much of it in the southeast, where we may see some of our more concerned groundwater issues because of the sands and the type of agriculture, but it is pretty much speckled throughout the entire county. This next layer would also apply through the rule, and these are the nitrogen restricted areas. So in all parts of the county, anything that is pink would have to follow this rule, but areas that are not pink but within a nitrogen restricted area would still be subject to the proposed rule prohibitions. So if you are in any of these areas that are not pink but within this black bordered area, you would still be required to follow those prohibitions. So these areas are defined based on a percentage or a calculation on the number of groundwater quality samples that exceed the safe drinking water standard. And if I stand correctly, I believe it's 15, if there's more than 15% of the wells that exceed the enforcement standard of 10, and the overall average of the wells sampled are greater than 5 milligrams per liter. So that's how those boundaries have been defined. And those would be the areas that we would be required to implement this rule upon should it be adopted, as well as areas within pink. So any questions on that? I just wanted to bring that to your attention. At this point in time, I do not intend or have not drafted any comments on the rule revision since it's open for public comment now. If you have any objections to me doing that, should I decide to, please let me know. Or if there are things that you would like to comment on, you're obviously free to do that as an individual. But if you would like to make any suggestions or recommendations or other comments for the rule revision as a committee, then we certainly could arrange that. However, I believe just timing of the public comment period may not align with another committee meeting. So any discussion at this point, I'm open to it.
Mr. Chairman, I
Questions?
just have a question,
Yes.
Chase, if I may. Does this require legislative consideration?
It is not a statute,
Right.
but it is administrative code. So I would have to, let me go back here I think there's a timeline on this. So yes, there'll be in the winter of 2021. So this coming winter would be when is proposed to be near legislative review and hearing. So legislature would be involved. And obviously there's going to be, out of this public comment period, much more deliberation on the topic. So I should note though, as part of my participation in the technical advisory committee that was used in the development of the proposed rule, there were many stakeholders throughout the county, throughout the state that included all of the larger ag coalitions, environmental coalitions, municipalities, and particularly us as a county, where we would be the ones asked to implement this rule. So there has been quite a bit that's gone into this already, but it's far from over. So.
Any other questions? Chase,
Just
I have
a
a
general-
Mr. Kinnear.
It's a general question, but Chase, this seems like a really big deal. Is it?
It is. I don't think it's really hit the mainstream conversation right now, just because it's first out for public comment. But this has some large implications for agriculture in our county, as well as our groundwater. I believe you've heard in the past through many of the other groundwater discussions about impacts that agriculture has in parts of our county, and impacts that this particular rule focuses on agriculture because that's the type of rule that it is. Much of the discussions have gone into anywhere from septic systems to industrial waste and all the other potential land application activities. But this singles out particularly the authority that NR 151 has. And the economic analysis that was conducted for this proposed rule, I'm not sure if you looked into that, and I can share that with you on here. It's a 6-page document. It really goes into the impacts that it may have on small businesses within the state, as well as impacts by not doing anything and related to groundwater quality consequences or poor quality consequences. So I would encourage you to read this, but you are correct that this likely will be a big deal and will receive a lot of attention in the months to come. And it does have impacts here in Dunn County specifically.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chase, just a general clarification. It sounds like the intent is, I agree, this is really important. But it sounds like the intent is not to overall reduce the level of nitrates in groundwater, but rather to assure that they don't increase above the 10 parts per. Is that how you understand it, or am I hearing what you said wrong?
No, I think you're correct, and thank you for the clarification. That is the intent, is to not reverse necessarily, while that may be an outcome, but the intent is to hold firm and work towards reducing nitrate loss below the root zone that can impact groundwater quality, and try to keep it below 10 milligrams per liter.
Yeah, it just increases everyone's awareness of quality agricultural practices that we need to encourage. So, anything else by anybody?
And I would just add that, looking at staffing capacity and impacts that this may have on our local county and department, it's hard to understand quite yet. A lot of the burden is going to be put onto if it's rolled out in the way that I'm anticipating it to be as part of NR1, or excuse me, nutrient management plan implementations. Those activities are largely conducted by the farmers themselves. If they are certified to write their own plans, which would require, more training, of which our department is involved with. But the vast majority would be on private sector agronomists, and ensuring that they hit all the appropriate check boxes and components of a nutrient management plan, of which we would likely need to be reviewing. So this may incur a significant increase in workload for us. However, as we look at our goals and objectives regarding groundwater quality, this is a step in that appropriate direction.
A question for Chase.
Sure.
So this is some major changes. So what do you think is going to happen when the state finds out how much it's going to cost for cost sharing? So how many of these initiatives can be go forward with a great cost? If you can't spread from September 1st, all the cost to increase your manure pit and that kind of stuff. I mean, when the state sees the cost that analysts analyzed, or do you think these will be put on hold?
So I would just draw your attention to this website. I included it in the packet. And then if you click on this fiscal estimate, economic impact analysis, they go into addressing some of those specific questions, Supervisor Bjork, regarding manure storage and the cost, particularly here looking at the number of farms that it may impact within the state. Now, I haven't looked at or really have a grasp as to how these specific numbers would apply to Dunn County. Looking at the number of farms and where they're at and who has storage and who doesn't. And that would take some considerable effort to put some of these numbers together. But on a statewide basis, they are looking into some of those. And they also, if I back up here, they also put together some numbers, maybe it's down further, about the implementation statewide and how much it would cost in a given year. And let me see here. Right here, you can see summary of compliance and implementation costs on businesses, and it looks at $9.7 million over 10 years to implement such a rule. So that would be based on cost share and other sources of funds for that. As we struggle for continuous funding for staffing through our state grants for land conservation, that has yet to really be identified in here, the implementation costs specifically. But I will also draw your attention to this drinking water infrastructure and cost of avoidance, and look at dollar amounts calculated there based on an estimated or an actual number of 10% of private wells in Wisconsin have nitrate levels that exceed the safe drinking water standard and the costs associated with that. So I would encourage you to read through this. And to your specific question, Supervisor Bjork, I think that it is possible that this may be delayed for longer periods of time due to some of those impacts. But at this point in time, they have been somewhat addressed, and we'll have to wait and see how what other public comments come in and how this progresses through the legislature.
Chairman
Anybody
Quinn,
else? Yeah.
Chairman Quinn, I'm sorry, I have to let everybody know I have to leave the meeting. I have to take a relative to see the doctor, and that's pretty important for me. So
Okay.
I'm notifying everybody that I have to leave the meeting. Sorry.
Right. Thanks, Jim. You take care. Okay, I think we're done with this for now. Let's go on to 10A, resolution authorizing participation in the Department of Natural Resources Targeted Runoff Management Grant Program.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
if I might, I think you skipped over item 8A.
Oh, yeah, I did. Sorry. Thank you, Tom. We're back up to the 8A, Dunn County Directional Plan. Okay. Mr. Colson, you're on
All
again.
right. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay with the committee. I have a, we're constantly amending or rewriting or making these things better. And for those that haven't worked with Paul, he is a very efficient editor. And so he doesn't use as many words to say something as maybe someone like I do. And so I'd like to share with you. It's pretty much the same document, but it's in a much more let's say condensed version. And I guess seeing how you haven't seen this, I'd just like to read it to the committee and go through it and then get some comments about whether you support this or we need to make some changes. And so and it'll take me just a few minutes. So if it's okay for me to read it, Mr. Chair, or would you just read it online and just go from there?
That's fine. Go ahead.
So the issue is environmental water quality, and Dunn County recognizes that its use of natural resources and its built environment, and we'll call that the environmental footprint, impacts local, regional, and global communities, and that its environmental footprint has intergenerational impacts. Dunn County accepts its responsibility to provide and maintain a clean, safe, and healthy environment for its constituents now and into the future, and is committed to reducing its environmental footprint. So that has been reduced from what was in your packet. Implementation techniques. Use the county board standing committee structure and relevant staff to implement this policy and act as champions to prioritize and implement environmental actions such as A, meeting or exceeding environmental standards set by local and regional agencies, managing the county's natural resources such as groundwater, surface water, nutrient management in an environmentally responsible and sustainable manner. C, and this is something that I worked extensively with Chase on, just to kind of laundry list the things that's already going on, maintaining and updating key environmental plans and participation in environmental related organizations and efforts, including but not limited to. And we have, and I don't need to laundry list that, but you can see the stuff that you folks have been involved in, and that the county has made some pretty good strides in terms of environmental contributions. Manage Dunn County's environmental footprint in an environmentally sustainable and fiscal manner by, and here's some of the things that I think we want to do: adopting and maintaining practices to protect environmentally sensitive areas, adopting and maintaining erosion control documents, practices, and principles. And these ones with the adopting are things that we've talked about, aren't in place yet. And so it's something that we probably need to be looking at. Adopting and maintaining standards, principles, and practices to control and manage stormwater and runoff. Increase the use of environmentally responsible transportation modes, such as public transport, fuel-efficient vehicles, cycling, or walking. Reducing fossil fuel in its vehicle fleet, including highway department vehicles. Applying ecological sustainable design principles and renewable energy practices at all county facilities, such as solar projects and geothermal systems, such as we have at the Neighbors and the Government Center. Managing the use of energy and utilities such as gas, electricity, and water to achieve a more efficient and sustainable use of available resources. Managing waste through reduction, reuse, and recycling, or efficiently using finite resources when alternatives are not available. Procuring and using sustainable and environmental friendly products, and those are like cleaning products or things that we buy to maintain our county system. Conduct pollution emergency response planning to minimize pollution effects, provided such efforts do not compromise the effectiveness of the emergency response. Use environmental friendly winter road treatments, and that's for the highway department. Develop environmental sustainable partnerships within the wider community to raise awareness of environmental issues such as climate change, loss of fragmentation of habitat, responsible waste management practices, and etc. facilitate the collaboration of community organization, lecturers, researchers, and key speakers regarding integrating sustainability and environmental issues into the county's workflow. And then finally, conduct annual reports to the county board regarding progress made towards reducing the county's environmental footprint. And so before I turn it back over to the committee, I just want to say that this policy is far more reaching than PR&D. I'm having similar discussions with facilities because it does impact, you know, the buildings and the parks and things that the facilities manages, and it also impacts highway and some of the things they're doing. So it will be at those committee levels as well, and so they may add some things that this committee does not add or delete, but realize that it's much broader than just this committee, but it is going to come from this committee for a recommendation. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to the chair and the committee, and with the discussion that, you know, if you like what's there, that, you know, we can make a recommendation. But if you think that, you know, that there are things that need better explanation, or there are things that we don't need to include, that's what I like to do. And if it doesn't change the substance of this, then it could go with the understanding that staff will make any kind of corrections according to what the committee deems appropriate. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and to the committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Mr. Rivera.
sometimes there's a, catch 22, because I really miss, not meeting in person, but yet by meeting by Zoom, think of the fossil fuels that we're saving. So, I mean, sometimes, I don't know, if you can just cut, some of the meetings and just have them like Zoom meetings, and then maybe other times have them in-person meetings. It just seems like there's a conflict of interest there sometimes.
Well, certainly there's not a magic bullet, but I think that any it's like grains in an hourglass. I mean, each one as it passes, it impacts it. And so every little bit that the county can do, regardless of what it is, I think is important to discuss, and where practical and fiscally responsible, that the county can take on. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Diane.
Since we've put everything in the implementation standards, I wonder if we haven't, and I think it's apropos of Supervisor Bjork's just comment, if we haven't neglected, since it's long-term, if we haven't neglected a bit climate change and aspirational standard of net zero emissions and so on. I just wonder if that's missing. I don't feel terribly, I mean, I'm not hugely wedded to including that because this is pretty comprehensive, but I think we at least ought to consider it.
If I could follow up.
Sure.
So Supervisor Morehouse, are you, so I'm getting to the, and maybe it's more than just one bullet point or one area of this, but are you suggesting that maybe we include some language about net zero as part of number 5 here, where we talk about climate change and loss of fragmentation? Or do you think that is its own entity? Or I guess I just want to kind of understand maybe your thoughts.
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think it deserves its own bullet point.
Okay.
Looking at a longer term plan here. And so what we can do, first of all, in recognizing the impacts of global climate change on county operations, and how we might address that in our directional plan. I think it needs its own space. So
you think that we would pull out the such as climate change and that would end up being its own point, and then follow up with things like net zero and some of the other principles or standards that are going on right now?
That's what I do, Bob.
Okay, I understand.
Any other comments?
Does the committee agree with that before I just, start making changes? Is that something the committee supports?
I agree with it. So, yeah, once Diane, you want to try and, or you, Bob, could you draft something that suggests?
I will, and then in what I can do, and talking to Paul about this, because I was concerned about how to do this, and not have to wait for the next meeting is I would send it individually to committee members, and then you would respond only to me with your comments, and we'd have a conversation. That way, we aren't having a walking quorum. So I could do it that way, Mr. Chair.
That sounds good. Okay.
Other comments,
Any other
considerations?
Yeah. Any other? Okay.
Well, it is an action item. I don't know if you want to act on this at this time, Mr. Chair. If you want to bring it back, I guess it's up to the committee.
Why don't if the committee is favorable to it, why don't we consider action on it? I guess it would be a motion to endorse this statement and forward it on. So
with the amendment regarding climate change, maybe.
right, with the amendment.
Okay.
I will happily move that forward, Mr. Chairman.
And is there a second?
I will second it. Kinnear here.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed? No.
So the
Okay,
only,
sure.
okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I'll let you finish your action. So the
That's
only
right.
other thing that may happen is because it is going to other committees is that there may be some other amendments, but I will make sure that those amendments come to you, and if, in my humble opinion, if I feel that it's substantial, I will raise the question. But I also would say that if a committee member, when you get an email that you say, I think that's substantial and that we may consider bringing it back, I think that would be appropriate, because there are two other committees that are going to be looking at this as well. So,
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable plan.
all right. Thank you so much.
All right, and now we will move on to item 10, resolution on the targeted runoff management grant program.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. At the previous meeting of this committee on March 9th, I brought through on a staff report the discussion of a targeted runoff management grant to give you a little bit of a background. And I said that I would come likely at this meeting with two resolutions, and here they are. This first resolution is required by the State Department of Natural Resources to authorize participation in their targeted runoff management grant program. If you like, I certainly can read the resolution to you, but basically it designates, in summary, it designates me as my position to authorizing us to move forward with signing grants and applications and seeing through the projects regarding this type of a grant. So this first resolution is basically authorizing us and our responsibility to such a program with the state.
Any questions from the committee?
I do have one amendment to make to it. I forgot to mention on the now therefore be it resolved. The Dunn County Board of Supervisors hereby authorizes the County Conservationist Environmental Services Department to act on behalf of Dunn County rather than on of. I did not catch that earlier, so I do have a typo there, but just want to clarify that. So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
anytime that we can get some outside money to come in, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, motion to approve has been made by Supervisor Bjork. Is there a second? Diane, sorry, Morehouse seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay. Thank you. 10B. I guess that's the authorization.
Yep, 10, yeah,
It's the
10B,
authorization, okay.
yeah, 10B would be,
Okay,
okay, yeah, this second resolution does reference the previous resolution that you just recommended. This is a specific resolution for a specific grant. So unfortunately, we need to have two resolutions at this point in time. In the future, it's likely that we'll only need to present one resolution back to full county board regarding specific applications. So this one is related to the specific application for Valamo Farms in the township of O'Galley. And as part of the background information later on here on the resolution, it describes some of the activities. Again, this is a resolution authorizing us to apply on behalf of the farm to secure cost share dollars to achieve compliance with ag performance standards and prohibitions. So again, this would be additional money coming into the county to assist these producers and farmers in achieving compliance. And so that's what, any questions on this resolution or specifics related to the farm activity, I can answer now.
okay. Can we have a motion to authorize this resolution?
Supervisor Kinnear moves to authorize the resolution.
Okay. Is there a second? Supervisor Bjork seconds. Any further discussion?
Just a point of clarification for the new guy here. When the process for these going to county board as far as signatures and timing on that, do you have any recommendations? I certainly can follow up with others after the fact, but I didn't know if I needed to get Tom, your signature today, or if it takes place at county board.
I think I can't remember that first resolution. Was it the county board that's got to approve it?
They both have the same signature.
Right. And I can sign it after they're approved by the county board.
Okay. Thank you.
That's our agenda. Any announcements from anybody?
Mr. Chair, I have two.
do we
Okay.
have to vote on that last motion?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Gary. Thank you. Going to sleep here. Yeah, let's vote on the last resolution. All in favor? Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, sorry. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. All right, motion carries. Announcements. Bob, you had something?
I will be on vacation from April 11th to the 17th, so I will not be in attendance at the next meeting. So I don't think you'll see much, if anything, from zoning for that meeting. But realize that the following meeting, I have two public hearings that will be scheduled, and you will be getting the notices on those probably next week for those. And then the other thing that I just wanted to bring to your attention, and I'll try to get this at an upcoming meeting, is for your legislative agenda, is that when we part of the discussion that happened during the BOA for the expansion of the mine was a question about cumulative effects of land uses and maybe some of the practices that go along with land uses. And it may be something that the county might on its legislative agenda consider putting on there, so we could have discussions with the state. Cumulative effects of land uses is important, maybe noise and vibrations, but cumulative effects is maybe some of the things that go along with those, such as high capacity wells and what those are having. We've had, I think during the LOSG, we had discussions about that, but the state wasn't interested in looking at the cumulative effect at that time. But it may be something that the county might want to, as a legislative agenda, bring forward. So if that's something of interest, I could at a future meeting bring some information about that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Any other announcements? Diane?
well, it's not exactly an announcement. It's apropos of Mr. Coulson's vacation. I just want to say that after the last year, you most certainly have earned.
Oh, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'll tell you that.
Not probably enough.
I'll come back with a sunburn. Thank you.
I agree. Okay, are there any, so our next meeting is April 13th. If there are agenda items that you want to bring up, could get them to Mr. Carlson or myself, and we'll
And
put them
Tom,
in the hopper.
Tom, if I may,
Go
just
ahead.
a reminder, not so much an announcement, but just a reminder that we will be holding a public hearing at the next meeting on April 13th. That notice will be in the paper, published, the first publication will come out tomorrow in the paper, and then again next Wednesday. Yesterday, I sent the notice by email along with a copy of the draft ordinance to all the surveyors that work in the county. There's about 18 or 20 on my distribution list. I also sent it to each and every one of the town clerks for all the municipalities in the county. And either today or tomorrow, I'll be sending it to a list of realtors and title companies that I'm going to pull together, just trying to reach as many people as we can that may not read the paper. So, and it should be noted that a copy of the draft ordinance, Krista posted that on the county website as well. So that's available. So just a reminder.
Sounds good. Anything else? All right, then we're adjourned. Have a good day, everybody.